Yeah.
hear a lot.
So yeah, you were mentioning that Alex Ramosi back in the day, he had something where if somebody would come in and they didn't have a particular supplement, that he would sometimes refer them to somebody else, right? Because
Yeah.
it builds massive trust because it shows that you're not just looking to get the sale, and that if somebody else does make more sense, that you will refer somebody, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, like I actually had something like that very recently where a guy reached out to me on LinkedIn and he asked me if I've ever gotten into resume writing.
Oh, interesting. Ooh, that
So
sounds dry.
yeah, yeah, it's so dry. It's so dry that like, especially in comparison to what I've been focusing on lately with the fiction writing, that I'm like thinking in my head, like we've
I could
spoken about
do
this.
it.
I went to Claude and I was because I could technically I could technically do any type of writing. I could figure it out. But I went to
Yeah.
Claude and I'm like, should I touch this? Should I even for where I'm at right now? Should I even touch this? And it was like,
No.
nah, probably not. Like people pay. It's like people pay $200 or $300 for a resume. It's probably not worth your time. You'd have to like learn how to do it. It's very specific. There's a very specific type of formatting. All this like it's probably too much for a one-off thing to learn all that. So I actually remembered that there was this girl that I had spoken to on LinkedIn or lady, and I was able to dig her up in my DMs because I just searched the word resume, and like then that brought her to the top of my inbox. And I asked her if she's still, well, yeah, if she's still doing resumes and stuff. And of course she is. And her packages were kind of like in the range of like $500 on the low end to like 650, which honestly I understand. Like a good resume can, if it wins you a job, like that's
Yeah.
that's money on the table, right? So I wanted to potentially, and I might still refer him to her. I tried to actually negotiate a referral deal with
Oh,
her.
smart. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, because that means I don't really have to touch it at all, and I just even be straight with him. It's like I know a girl. She specializes in resumes, and here's who I'd recommend. I would highly recommend going with her. She's one of the few people I know that just specializes in resumes. That would be my recommendation. But she did say no to the referral commission, which I think is kind of like, she told me that she's like pretty fully booked up and stuff like this, and that she would not do the referral fee for that reason. But it's like I was asking for 25%, which on a $650 deal is like about buck 50, buck 60. And I think that even if she's fully booked up, it would still make sense for her because who knows, right? She does a good job for this guy, works out well. Maybe I got more people to send to her, right? So
Yeah.
that's my logic. Will I still send the guy to her? Possibly, possibly. But he
Yeah.
booked a call with me for Monday, and it seems like he might be interested in more than just resumes because the way he filled it out, it seems like he's also probably open to ghostwriting that maybe gets attention with different employers and maybe going that personal brand route to get a job and get attention and opportunities as opposed to maybe just the resume. But he might need
Yeah.
the resume as well. So,
I could
so yeah.
also maybe sing like cover letters too. It's like he needs like a specific cover letter for like I don't know, maybe do like a session with them where you're like, all right, like let's make a story specifically for this particular role. Because at the end of the day, like if people are just blasting out resumes, they're probably not going to get hired. Obviously, like that lady will make a one basic template one, but I hear that you have to like adjust them every single time that you're going for like another gig to like kind of like do it for that particular role or whatever. Like you get the boilerplate one, and then you kind of go from there. But you'd mentioned something too, because like in my brain, I probably would have shut off already as soon as they said resume. I'd be like, oh, good, like not my thing. Just like completely discarded them. So how did you know at that moment, like maybe there's more there? Because like that's also a bit of a skill that I feel like sometimes I might disqualify myself before that I need to.
So a couple things. One thing, this girl, she actually does. Just a side note, she does offer like cover letters, and I think she had something like along with the resume, she gives them like I saw one was like gives them like 10 or 12 templates that are probably like interchangeable, which is probably how she's able to like jack that up to 650. Because it seemed to include quite a bit. Anyway, that's aside from the point. Um, yeah, how did I sort of spot it with this guy? Well, number one, the message came through. I briefly checked him out, and I could tell he's like a high level guy, like a guy who used to be like, CEO. He's probably, I think he's been a founder as well. CEO, VP, like that level. He's also Canadian too, which is, I actually don't get too many Canadians, and I do charge in American dollars, so I've actually never worked with a Canadian. it's almost like, once they see those American dollars, right? Like
More
that
money.
probably changes everything, like, um, yeah. So anyway, but who knows with this guy, right? Um, so he actually ended up beating me to booking a meeting on Monday before I could even respond. It's like I didn't get back to him right away. Took me like a couple days or whatever. Then he booked a meeting, and when he booked the meeting, he filled out the form, and I could tell by his answers on the form that this is not just a guy who's going to go the route of blasting out the resume. He's looking for higher end. Obviously, he's looking for higher end positions. He's like semi-retired as well. He even said in the form, so you can kind of tell that he's looking probably for bigger opportunities, maybe opportunities to sit on a board, that kind of thing. So that's not just the traditional resume route. So when I answered him in that message, once he booked the call, that's when I answered him. I'm like, hey, name, just got a better chance to check out your profile, impressive background. Then I answered, I think, the part about the resume. I said, I've got somebody who I can refer you to if you need help with the resume. We can cover that on the call. Looking forward to it because I could tell that it seems like he's maybe looking for both. And yeah, if even though the girl turned down my humble 25% commission that I asked for, I might still refer him to her because I don't feel the desire to try and write a resume. And then like I think actually he even mentions in his message that like he's tried people for resumes and like not had a lot of success with it. So it's also probably pretty tough,
Yeah,
So,
resumes are really, yeah, they're not fun at all. It's
yeah,
not a document that I'd want to write for someone else or myself. So it's like I totally get that. You'd mentioned too on
yeah,
that Calendly form. It sounds like did you have specific questions on there? Like what's your intake form look like? Do you have like qualifying questions on there?
yeah. I got some. I have some really good questions that when somebody fills it out, it pretty much always tells me like who they really are. Like they would have to be pretty deceptive to get around my questions. They'd have to really answer a lot of things with just like NA, not applicable, or just and I'll usually be able to tell. Um, it helps me actually suss out. Like I've had people fill it out, and I can tell that by the way they filled it out that they're actually a ghostwriter who is looking for coaching.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
it's got all the questions there that tell me exactly what this person is really looking for. There's no other way of getting around it. It's like some of the questions are, what are you currently spending on investing in like your marketing or on your personal brand? Um,
It's a good one.
I think one is it's either like what's your goal or where would you ideally like to be in like 6 months to a year from now. It asks what is your what's your biggest challenge right now with LinkedIn? And it's got a drop down of like, or oh no, that one might be just an open tab for them to fill out. Another one is, what are you trying to achieve, or what are you trying to optimize for? And it's like newsletter subscribers, followers, brand authority, leads and opportunities, that kind of thing. And yeah, then there's a few others. Oh, what are your other like social media channels if you have any? What is your LinkedIn? What is your LinkedIn page link? Right. So, and there's more than that too. So with all the questions, I'll be able to tell if the person's serious, right? And if they don't answer the questions in a serious way and give like
Good
half-assed
answers.
answers, then that's another red flag,
Red
right? So
flag.
you probably know,
That's
yeah.
smart that you did it like that, though, since it kind of makes it so that when you come into the call, you could probably ask better questions because you already have a little bit of a background. I probably should do that too. I don't really have anything in my Calendly link that actually does any of that at the moment. That's a good strategy there to get a little bit more information. Are you finding that most people just only want leads though? Because and if they do only want leads, are you are you comfortable enough saying like, oh, there's I don't know, let's just say they're like, I want 5 qualified LinkedIn leads a month or some shit like that. Would you be comfortable doing that, or how would you approach that?
Okay, so yeah, so number one, like it's not it. I found it's not just leads. Um, Maybe there's something about the way I advertise my services where I don't seem to just attract the people who are like desperate for leads. I tend to get people who are a little bit more, have a more of a holistic holistic goals that also have to do with like brand authority, things like that. Sometimes it's to do with building the email list. Sometimes it's they might want eventual leads and opportunities, but they just understand that like it might not be in month one. I tend not to get the people where it's like they need leads like yesterday, because like those are your especially for something like ghostwriting, those are kind of your worst prospects because that's just kind of not how it works. We
Yeah,
spoke about this on one of our other calls, and I was talking to you and Kelsey, and I said that like if we're really realistic about our own journey on LinkedIn, right? Or you could also say Substack too.
yeah,
If you really look back and you look at how long it really took you to generate leads in the first place, but then to generate high quality leads,
yeah.
I'm telling you, like my first like my first 3 to 5 months on LinkedIn back in the day when I was first building, I might have gotten like one lead or so, or like one booked sales call or something. I wasn't sending cold DMs. I'm just talking about inbound.
Yeah,
And she ended up being unqualified, right? And it wasn't until like probably that 6 to 8 month mark, maybe it picks up a little bit, but still, nothing major. And then at the year mark, then something really good happened. Year and a half mark, something even better happened, right?
yeah,
So it's like people out here promising like, yeah, I'll get you leads from day one. And as a ghostwriter, it's just not like the most realistic, because what you're really building is someone's personal brand and their authority and like a long-term brand asset that is going to pay like dividends in the future. You're not just a lead gen service. You're not just a cold email service, for example.
yeah. It's interesting. My friend's part of this entrepreneur organization, EO, and they were talking about like how SEO is dying, and now you have to look at like this thing called generative GEO, so that when the search engine, the large language models like Claude and like ChatGPT, Gemini, they look at you, and if you Google even yourself, it probably already knows exactly who you are, and it'll tell you
Yeah.
like all the projects you've worked on. So I think that that's what also people are after too, because like when people now like go Google your name and they see in the AI that it knows exactly who Mike Bolton is or exactly who Jeremy is, that helps like big time. It knows all about all, even it even knows about some of the projects that we're working on now. So it's insane that like I think that obviously if you drive like this 28,000, because I shared that thing, this post the other day on LinkedIn, that even from our live sessions with me, you and Kelsey, since the beginning of the year, from the sessions alone, it's driven like 28,000 views from YouTube, and I didn't touch any of it, which is crazy. So I'm looking at that kind of stuff and going like, I think people want to the algorithm to know who they are, because that essentially is their new resume, right? The guy that's looking for a resume, what he really wants probably is AI to know exactly who he is, what project he works on, and like how to frame it for people that are looking for his services.
Man, yeah. A couple of different things came to mind there. I have done the search, and it knows who I am. Like, say, ChatGPT, it knows who I am. If I say, like, Mike Bolton
Ghostwriter,
Ghostwriter
for
or
sure.
Mike Bolton LinkedIn Ghostwriter, then it knows who I am.
Absolutely. Because you're
Of
competing with
course,
a singer. That's not fair.
if I just put in Mike Bolton, the
Yeah.
results may vary.
Yeah. For sure. That makes sense. So the intent word makes it so it knows exactly who you are. And I'm sure it even talks about your book and like your Substack page and all that shit.
Yeah. So something that came to mind for me, like as you were talking about that, is that for something like a book, right? Laying the groundwork and associating your name with different writing genres, different with the name of your book, right? Like, my first book is going to be called, well, at least I'm fairly certain it's going to be called Danger in the Valley. Uh, and if I can like lay some groundwork there, even that could help as well. As I get closer to being done, I'm going to be looking at like, okay, how can I actually get the message out there about this book? Because yeah, man, like the now that's also a competitive, like that's a competitive space too. Is the whole book and like novel space as well. Um, I do have some. It appears I have some advantages on paper, like having audiences like on LinkedIn, stuff like that. Definitely help. And I did something interesting as well. Another use case for Claude. We always have our Claude use cases every week.
For sure.
Actually, damn, I think we were no, it wasn't a joke. It was like we could probably do an entire
Yeah,
live on
John
how we're
wanted us to do
using
that.
Claude.
John,
Yeah,
the
yeah, that's
workshop,
right.
yeah, Wordsmith wanted us to do that.
I knew that was a
Yeah.
thing. He's a great guy. There's a couple of guys in Growth Coast who are actually writing novels as well. James Barnes is another one.
Love James.
John the Wordsmith, and there's another guy, Derek. Forget his last
Oh,
name. Begins with an S.
Sit Away or something. Yeah, he's written like several books. He's written
Yeah,
like 20 books or something like that.
I
It's
think he's
crazy.
written 19 books or something like that, which is
Yeah.
insane. Uh, yeah, yeah. I should start reading some of his books. Yeah, that's another thing about writing is it's really unlocked. I've really remembered how much I actually love reading, and now it's almost like there's not enough time in the day to get into all the different books I'd like to read while also writing and still putting out social media content. But um,
Are you planning on
oh
ghostwriting books too for people, like novels? Is that maybe a next move? And then I've also heard that books are kind of like a podcast. They're almost like a way of like kind of elevating yourself so that people are like, oh, Mike's like a published author, and it almost makes you like look at like so like speaking gigs, and it kind of opens up people look at you differently for whatever reason when you write a book.
yeah, I could definitely see that. Especially, I think, especially I think if you go it could work either way. But I think if you go the traditional route and you're like an author through an actual publishing company, I think that gives you massive credibility. Um, could you achieve a similar level of credibility from self-publishing? And like, I think, yeah, you probably could. And it might be just as heavy, to be honest, if there's a big if. If you had like some good sales numbers, then I think that the self-publishing route could be pretty legitimate for you as well. Like if you had some numbers, like you sold thousands of copies of your books, or even one book, or even tens of thousands. Now you're like that. That's actually more serious. I've looked at what the realistic numbers are, and apparently in the genre that I'm kind of writing in for this first book of sort of this noir crime fiction. It's like if a book does like 2,000 copies in the first year, it's considered like sort of a moderate, like, yeah, moderate level of success for a debut novel. Um, the real the real money, especially like in this genre, but like across all, is doing multiple books. It's when writers are on their like second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. There you have it. Like that Derek guy, 19 books, right? Even that alone, we're talking about it. It gives
Yeah, it's
him like
nuts.
more legitimacy. 19 books, kind of gonna get you curious. If this guy's done 19 books, these things must be pretty good, eh? Right? So,
Yeah, that's
um,
bananas. I think that
the
you'll
the
do well there because you already have an audience. I found that I have friends that have tried to publish books or get publishers, and a lot of the times they say, "Hey, do you have an audience?" And they're like, "What's your socials look like?" So I think that you're kind of already a little bit ahead of the curve there because you got your LinkedIn audience with 20K, you got your Instagram that's got like 25K. I don't know what other ones you have. I'm sure that you have other ones that they're probably sitting around that are just because you mentioned a pizza one the other day that I'd never heard of. So I was like, "Fuck! Like, what other fucking audiences have you grown that I don't
Oh,
know about?"
I got a little 30K audience over on Threads. Not doing
Damn,
anything with that one.
damn.
Um, no, but not actually. I think I actually do have I do have 3 or 4 thousand on Threads because I used my Bolton's Bites Instagram and
Funneled
and
it.
created a Threads account there, and everybody, like a lot of people from Bolton's Bites, just automatically followed the Threads account. So I got like 3 or 4 thousand over there technically as well. I got the 12.5K on Twitter. Um,
It's a good audience size there too.
yeah, not bad. But the thing, yeah. So the thing is, I've like so I've used Claude to kind of like almost as like a consultant to ask it to about like what are the give me the real numbers here. All right, like I don't care if you hurt my feelings. Give me the real numbers here. Like, and also it knows my book. Like I've taken a PDF of my book and I've fed it into Claude to even analyze it. Right, like, and it can tell me like it can also tell me where it's weak, like where I maybe need to like develop it more, or which character. Like this is the crazy. This is where it's super useful. Is like which characters need to be developed more. Where in the plot, like, does it sag? Like stuff like that. Stuff like that. Realistically, where do you think how many words this book will probably be when it's all said and done? Stuff like that. But I've also used it to analyze the book from a lens of like commercial viability almost, and I think it actually is. It's given me some pretty realistic numbers because it with the first book, Danger in the Valley. I just did this like actually last night and again like today with another idea. I actually have a second book idea. I don't know if you know about that, but
I think I've seen you talk about it, but I don't know much about it. Yeah, yeah.
so I
Yeah,
have
it's
this
crazy how
second book
you get
idea.
inspired. Yeah, it's wild, right? The inspiration.
Yeah, and this one hit me like a big epiphany, right? Like, and I just got going with it, and I'm already like 36,000 words into it. But I ran both of them through Claude, and what I like is it gave me. I asked it to rate both books out of 100, and like the numbers were not the same, and I really like that. It with Danger in the Valley, like in its current state, if was not to develop it anymore, which I am going to develop more, like even I feel I knew this. It feels thinner in the second half because there's a lot of like plot escalation, which is great because like the plot really escalates after the second half, where like some people start paying some of the consequences of this criminal infrastructure in Medellin, right? So things really rapidly escalate, but it's like there needs to be more of a payoff with certain characters. You need to go deeper with some of the characters. You need something that shows these two characters, their childhood friendship, you need at least one chapter that like flashes back to their childhood friendship, stuff like that. So like if I was to do absolutely nothing to it right now, in terms of like the commercial viability or whatever, or just overall score, it'd give me about like a 77 or 78, which believe it or not, I'm actually like I'm happy with as a number. However, if I develop it, which that's the plan, it'd be more like an 85 or 87 out of 100, right? But my second book idea, when I fed it into Claude just with a voice clip, two voice clips, told it what the entire plot line is. And it's like that idea is like an 88.
Oh damn.
And if it at its absolute ceiling of where it could go, it's like a 93.
Damn.
So like that, the fact that there was a gap between them, and realistically, I actually do think that the second book has more potential, and because I think it's more relatable to a wider group of people. So I would actually agree with those numbers, and I'm not just like sugarcoating it for myself. So yeah, I think you can like that's one of the use cases for AI is that it does a good job of telling you like are you on the money or or do you have
Yeah,
work to do?
I think I've told you this too in past calls that I use it before I reach out to a prospect. I'll scrape their profile and I'll say like go or no go, and it'll be like, no, this person doesn't like have like any authority. They literally probably are going to waste your time, or they don't, they're not in a position probably to buy this, da, 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 or they don't have shit to say on their profile, so it's going to be hard to get anything out of them. So it's really interesting because it does push back, and I don't know if you use Claude Cowork, but I just hooked that up this week, and I was a little bit nervous because you get it on, I don't know if you use a Mac, but I think it's only on Mac right now, desktop. You download the app and it gives you access to your machine. And I was a little terrified because I was like, what if it fucking like logs into like it apparently only looks at the screen that you're on. But in my head, before I knew how it worked, I was like, what if it logs into like my Wells Fargo account and fucking transfers money, or my Coinbase account and fucking fucks with my shit. So that was a bit of a
Yeah,
concern. But you could like have it like stop like certain apps, but I tested a couple things. One of them, I had it. I know there's a product that you guys use called Condo that sits on top of LinkedIn's messaging. But I
yeah,
get so many LinkedIn messages and I don't use that product that I was worried that I was missing something. So I basically opened up LinkedIn and I ran the prompt from Cowork to say, go check to see if I missed any sales messages. And it went through all my fucking messages and like reported back to me essentially on like what was going on. You can also do stuff like where you have your Gmail and you're like, all right, get me all of my expenses for like growth go say, and pull all those up and tally them up and then send them to a spreadsheet. It'll build it all for you. There's
well,
another guy named Ruben that's really good at AI that's like on LinkedIn, and he was talking about he had it log into Fiverr and build a job thing, like a job description, and go hire people off of Fire or get them to actually apply for a gig, and it was all through like prompts. I was like, what the fuck? Like that's like I think that's like the next stage of things where you're actually like it's built into your system and your workflow. So I think Hod did something similar where he had it like log into his Substack and scrape every single one of his notes and then compile them and looked at all the data on like which ones performed well and then created almost like a massive brief so that he could prompt it and ask it to develop similar ideas. So I was like, I think that that's like kind of like the next evolution, like the next like step above. I'm starting to fuck with it a little bit now, but I'm still trying to figure out like use cases for like how to make that work. But it's pretty wild, man. Like you should look into it. It's nuts.
yeah, uh, yeah. That kind of becomes one of those things where it's like it just depends where is your level of trust
Oh, for sure.
with it. Like I can tell you honestly, and I did a search on this because it's like so now that I'm developing these ideas, and quite frankly, I could see some of these books like no word of a lie. I could see some of these books being like maybe even movies.
Okay.
Like they strike me as having also kind of like some of that cinematic potential in this, right? Especially yesterday I was spending a bit of time on the first book, and I realized I actually had a structural issue in that I was starting that first chapter kind of, well, basically in a way that you're not really supposed to start any story. um, Maybe there are some stories that do break this rule, but I think you're better off kind of always starting a story. What they call the Latin word for it is in media res, and what it is, it means like in the middle of things. Basically, starting in the middle of the action, also known as like an inciting incident, right? So starting in the middle of the action. You know about this because like you do it with your shorts. Like
Yeah.
you talk about having, instead of starting your short with like, "Hi, my name's Jeff, and I work with something something da 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 AI,
So
and we're bringing
boring.
something to the market that's going to solve all of your CRM problems." Instead of
Yeah, it's so boring, and
that,
that's how everyone does it. That does it. So that's not trained, right?
it's like, man, I was 250K in debt. I had creditors calling me off the hook, and then one day, it all, everything came to a halt, and this happened, right? Like starting right in the middle of the
Action.
action, right in the middle of that story. And I started my Danger in the Valley book, which actually was inspired kind of by a conversation I had with this guy, Jake Summers. I don't know if you know about him
Oh yeah,
from Growth Coast. So he, when I hopped on a call with him,
Cambodia, right?
what's up?
The Cambodia guy.
Yes, Cambodian mango farm guy. Yeah. Uh, so on the call with him, like I had very rough notes, a very rough outline on what I wanted my book to be. It was completely, really very different from how it is now. I had like two cartel bosses on opposite sides of the valley and stuff, and like that changed because I ended up realizing, number one, cartels don't even participate in the type of crime that my book is about, and then number two, cartel bosses don't really like, they don't do, they're not active enough because the way that they work is through other people, right? Like it's a top-down infrastructure, and they work through abstraction so that they can never be traced back to the crime, right? So the type of crime that my book is about, it's too low level for them. And they wouldn't touch it. And even if they were touching it, they'd have people below them executing on it. So if I
Mhm.
wanted to have more active characters that are actually doing stuff in the book, I need to go lower level, right? So I ended up restructuring that where it's kind of the levels that are below cartel boss, right? So that was one change. I was talking to him about some romance, like wife swapping situation. That didn't happen because that would have like made the book cheesy. Didn't do that. And something I ended up leaning into a lot more because he said something. He's like, you could have something where the tourist character, because I had decided that I wanted to have the tourist character. You could have it where it's like him arriving in Medellin. He's like, you remember what it's like arriving in a new country. Everything is new and exciting and all this. And I'm like, when he said that, I'm like, oh damn, yeah, because I actually did. I immediately thought back to Medellin and how wild it was arriving in that city, and just how like foreign it was, even though it's on the western hemisphere, right? Like directly below you. It's still such a culture shock in a lot of ways. So yeah, I remember that, that culture shock feeling and stuff, and I remember, you know, driving, being driven in an Uber down through the like into this valley and seeing the valley all lit up with like lights and stuff, and then being dropped off in basically what was like the most bustling tourist area of Medellin, and it immediately, like 30 seconds after getting out of the Uber, being asked if I want marijuana or cocaine, right? So
Damn.
I started off my book just with like that, just with the tourist arriving in Medellin, and it's cool, but it's just this kind of a series of mishaps. Like, you know, gets out of the airport, swarmed by cabbies, drives into the city, asked if he want drugs 30 seconds out of the Uber, goes to an ATM, he jumps a little bit when another guy enters the room or whatever, gets cash, walks up a hill to eat Chinese food, walks down, almost gets locked out of his Airbnb. That's just a series of mishaps. It's not like an inciting incident that
Right.
changes anything in the book. So
I
now
see.
I restructured it where it starts with this German tourist who meets a girl in a club and ends up going home with her at the end of the night. And he makes it's implied that he just made like a big mistake because she's the one who places the call for the car. That's one huge red flag, you know. And then he just gets into the back of a black SUV,
Oh
and then it
God.
drives off into the darkness of the night, right?
That's
So
pretty
it
sick.
so it stops right there, and then it's like and then chapter two is now then the Canadian tourist entering Medellin, and it just now it all kind of makes sense from there. It leaves you on that cliffhanger. You don't know what happened with that German tourist. You will find out later on, and now it kind of makes more sense.
It's
Yeah,
really interesting because it seems like a lot of the stuff that we learn, like ghostwriting, kind of comes up in books, but it's on a grander scale. Because like you kind of left like an open loop with this guy, like getting meeting this girl or whatever, and she seduced him, and then he's like off in this truck now, probably with some mob boss. But you kind of just left it at that, and you kind of move forward. So is that? It seems like
exactly.
it's intentional, but how when you're looking at some of this stuff, like how do you is there like a map or something that you like have a one page thing where you're trying to figure out all these different characters and how they relate to each other? Or in my head, I'm just trying to figure out like how do you when something's so big, like a piece like a book like that, how do you keep track of everything in your brain? Is it like an out like a kind of like a table of contents outline type thing or whatever? Or how does that work?
Yeah. So for both, yeah. So we'll just focus on book number one here. There's two main things going on. Number one, I'm kind of obsessive. Like I kind of have this ability to contain the world that I'm sort of describing in my head and keep a lot of different like characters and variables in my head. I am good at that. However, I wouldn't leave it just to that. So I started off and I had all this in Notion, but I found Notion, it's good, right? But I find it a little bit less overall a little bit less user friendly. It has all the capabilities and stuff, and it is genuinely better at certain things. Like you can create like a Notion database. That's a useful tool. You can create a Notion calendar. I really like it for those features. But when we're talking about like just documents, documents on top of documents on top of documents, just documents for days, I like Google. So the book really lives in Google, like Google folders. And, I've got like the overarching Danger in the Valley folder. And then within that, I've got like one folder is outlines and maps. Another one's called chapter edits. Another one's called like alternative chapters. Another one is notes and scraps. Another one is the manuscript. Um, yeah. So yeah, I've got like, and then within each of those, I'm just constantly filing away different documents. Sometimes if you have an idea about a certain chapter, but you're not going to write it today, or you have an idea about a certain character, you write something up in a Google Doc and you just store it away so that you come back to it at a later point and you don't forget it. So it's a mixture of like just the ideas swirling through your mind on a daily basis, and also making sure that you actually do store them as well.
It's really interesting too because I found that every time like I was like in a new city and like you're like I'm gonna go like meet a girl or whatever and go out and you're so pumped and you're excited to meet someone, but then like sometimes there is consequences that come with this shit. You hear I don't know if these are like myths or whatever, but you hear about stories about people like waking up like in a bed of ice or whatever with their organs like like getting. I've heard, I don't know if these are like fake stories or what, but they circle around, right? And even my own experience, like I kind of jumped into like I had a girl that I met from high school and we ended up getting married after like we're divorced now, but I'm still kind of going through it with her. Like we own a house together, and I'm getting off the title, or she has to basically. We're selling the house, and I'm finally getting rid of it. But it's caused like a lot of damage to like me like recently, where I've had to like fly up to Oregon and file like a case against her, and Claude actually helped me do that. But like it was because she was supposed to remove my name from like the mortgage, and she never ended up doing it on time, and it stuck to my credit. So it's like a hot mess. So I think it's smart that you're doing that because I look back at that and I'm like, I probably jumped into that relationship way too soon. Like I probably should have like tested the waters. But I think that when you're like, like emotions are high and there's sex involved and like things like that, like your brain, at least the male brain, kind of tends to like let a little loose. And I think that thing of like not really like kind of thinking things through, like it was painful to the point where like I would never let that happen again. Like to the point where I'm not like guarded, but I'm also just not like kind of trying to like jump into things super quickly anymore and like a little bit more reserved. And it's really interesting too because you mentioned the cartel bosses kind of work in layers. She kind of does the same thing with me. Like she doesn't ever talk to me. Like if I send her a message, she'll send someone else to contact me. And like one of the
Okay.
guys actually, this could be a book too because this story was nuts. Like one of the guys that she had contacting me, he always was talking shit to me when I lived up in Oregon. We lived in Portland. He was like, "This guy he doesn't make as much money. You need a man that makes way more money." Da da da. And this guy ended up ripping off the stock market for $47 million, and the Security Exchange Commission caught him, and now he's in jail with Parkinson's disease. So I think that something about like getting arrested caused he's because he's an older man caused his body to like create Parkinson's in jail. So she was hanging out with this whole crowd of people or whatever. But I was laughing because she was like always working through people. There's actually something in like narcissistic personality disorder called flying monkeys. And it's actually a thing where they use triangulation actually to like essentially work through other people through you to influence you. So it's really interesting because it sounds like something that the cartel does too, like where they have these abstractions where they'll never get caught because they're making calls, but through other
Yeah.
people in other channels.
Yes. So I've got, like, and I got stuff in my book too where when different people meet who are like at that level, they speak in more coded language, right? They won't like they'll refer to something like they'll say something like the zone is getting noisy, right? As opposed to talking about the particular type of crime that they're talking about, right? They'll say the zone is getting noisy, or like they'll refer to one guy as like the zone stabilizer, or things like that, right? So they speak in coded language as another way of protecting themselves as well.
I heard the
And
Epstein files did that too. Like they were talking about treats, and like Elon Musk was like, "Oh, I want some. Where are there really? What's your best party? Is there treats there?" They were talking all this fucking code, like you're saying, like, and apparently that was all released. So it must be a thing on these like crime organizations that do shit like that, just so that maybe like less likely to be interpreted. I guess as it's happening.
wait, you said Elon Musk was talking about what? You said
So
treat
but so the Epstein files,
Epstein.
yeah, the Epstein files apparently they talk in code. Like they say,
Yeah,
"Oh, like you have any treats or
pizza,
desserts?" Yeah,
ice cream.
pizza, ice
Yes, yes,
cream,
yes, yes.
shit like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
interesting because like a lot of these files have been surfaced, and a lot of them are
yeah.
talking in code like that. So it kind of reminds me of what you're talking about.
Yes, yeah, it is kind of like that. It is kind of like that. Yeah, so criminal organizations, especially at the highest levels, yeah, they seem to speak in more coded language. Definitely a thing. Oh, but by the way, like you kind of briefly were getting into the sort of like the the dangers even of like dating, let's say.
For sure. You don't know what you're getting into.
Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you know that like Medellin in particular is another level that like um, it doesn't really compare to anywhere in the world where it's more dangerous. I'm kind of quoting somebody here who's actually a friend of mine. He spoke about this particular crime in Medellin. There's no place in the world where it's more dangerous for a guy to date, like to go on a date with a woman than in like Medellin, Colombia, right?
Oh, damn.
And a lot of the time, it would be pretty safe to say that generally speaking, it would probably, yeah, it'd be women who have a higher risk when going out on a date with like with guys, right? There's, you hear stuff on in that whole side of things too, because like you've heard things about like the date rape drug and stuff like that, right? Well, in Medellin, they have something, and it's called scopolamine. Okay, I don't know. Have you heard about it?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's
Doesn't
called
sound fun though.
scopolamine, and it's basically one of the premises for my book. That's what that's what Danger in the Valley is about. Danger in the Valley is about this type of crime that they do in Medellin, where girls drug tourists with this scopolamine, which is it's derived from a plant, and it usually involves putting it into the guy's drink, right? And what it does is it doesn't make him pass out or anything like that. But what it does is I would call it like a childlike naivety. So it makes you like very gullible and very naive. So for example, if I was to if someone was to drug you with scopolamine and then say to you, "All right, Mike, let's go to the ATM and we're gonna pull some cash," you'd be like, "Okay," which is wild to think about, right? Because like you'd say to yourself, like, "How the hell could that ever happen to me?" Like I don't know, I'm that, but apparently that's what it does, and from what I've heard about it, and research, and I even I don't have a personal story where like I was never drugged with scopolamine, but I actually do have a friend who was, and
Damn.
so apparently yeah, so it must work. It must do what the stories actually say because it seems to just like routinely like they're able to just like yeah take guys to the ATM and extract cash. Sometimes they do it multiple times too. Like
Damn.
they'll hit like the guy's limit or something, and then like take him back again or whatever. They'll do multiple withdrawals. So yeah, like that's kind of the premise. That's the premise of my book, and yeah, I've kind of been keeping that kind of like secret because I don't think that anybody has really truly written a book about this particular subject, not at the same level that I'm doing it now. Like it's been mentioned, but there's never been like an entire book based around it. So yeah,
That's interesting. I remember hearing back on the news like recently too that there's people on Tinder that will scam people out of crypto. Like they'll pretend that they're like organizations that are pretending to be hot chicks and like getting to know this guy or whatever, and then all of a sudden like using like social engineering, like oh I like you, da da da, da, like love bombing them essentially, and then figuring out a way basically to like rip them off, and it's like a whole
right.
like thing now. It's called pig butchering. So like I think that that's really interesting, like when you don't know if like you're dating someone, like you don't know what's what anymore, and it's so sad that like I have to feel that guarded like going out into the world now of like knowing is this person real or is this person trying to like jack me or whatever. So I think that that's really interesting, like going into a place like that. I guess you have to like date through your social circles or your friends somehow versus like just meeting randoms.
and this is kind of why this is an interesting book for me to write, because one of the characters, the tourist, who in the book, I'm just calling him like the tourist, which is kind of like it's kind of a bit of a literary device in itself, is that instead of giving him like a name, like, and I don't know, we'll see. Maybe I'll end up calling him like John or Dave or something, right? But like, I, throughout the entire book, I've just referred to him as the tourist. He's loosely based on me, okay? And the thing about this character is he has a pretty good track record of not getting into too much trouble. Like, walking the line of like of danger, but not getting into a city, like, he's but living to tell the tale, right? So he has this confidence where he almost thinks the reason why this is happening to other tourists, and actually, like, there are like plenty of tourists and expats think this way too, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, that happens to them because they're dumb, like they're making stupid decisions, and you know what? Granted, yes, some of them are. Some of them are. It's like, some girl on Tinder is like, hey, yeah, can I come back to your Airbnb on the first night, and I'll bring my friend with me? And it's like, dude, I know you got like some fantasies, like threesome fantasies or something like this. But if this kind of stuff didn't happen to you back in your home country, uh, like it might not happen in Medellin, Colombia, right? So the tourist character kind of is smart. He is smarter and better at navigating through that sort of like that criminal the underbelly of Medellin. Like, he's just better at that. However, that also becomes kind of like his flaw, because he's a little too confident about it too, and he almost feels a little bit untouchable. He kind of feels like, well, that can't happen to me. I know how to navigate through this, and yeah, so he comes kind of closer and closer to danger as the book progresses, until like kind of one time toward the very end where he just narrowed. Well, I should just not even actually complete that sentence.
So, out of curiosity, after knowing about this drug that people do when they're out there partying, are you a little nervous now when you go out by yourself and like talking to people, and like if you're hitting it off with like a beautiful woman, or you're like, is your brain like, oh shit, is this real or is this fake? Like, how do you discern that?
So, I mean, as my character is loosely based on the tourist, uh, my answer is, well, truly speaking, though, I actually do feel like I am able to read most situations, and simply put, like, well, I'm a good read of people, right? So if you're in a situation and like, okay, so you're talking to some beautiful woman, or like, I'm able to typically tell what someone's intent is. It's like, is somebody just looking to, you know, take your money, or is it more like a genuine attraction, genuine interest, right? I think if you've got that ability to read people, you can navigate even a place like Medellin. However, like, I do believe I do believe it is getting tougher, because what I've heard is that now sometimes these girls play the long game. So
Oh
it's like
God.
they won't they won't drug a tourist on like the first date, or whatever, but they'll drug him on like the fifth, sixth, 17th, or seventh or something, right? So like build trust and then get him later, right? So yeah, then it becomes genuinely harder to navigate. But I don't know. I'm quite good at knowing what people's actual intent is.
So
That
when
would
are
be
you
my
gonna?
my answer.
What's the what's the timeline for this book, and like the Medellin book, and like, as you have a plan? Are you trying to get it published? Are you gonna self publish, or are you gonna just yeah? What's your plan there?
Yeah, so I'm pretty close. I've got a list of different ways I'm sort of like expanding on it now, developing certain characters. making more of a payoff in certain chapters. So I have like a checklist of things I have to go through, but like realistically speaking, I think I could kind of be at like a final draft. Well, not a draft that I would be like ready to probably go on to the next phase of. I think something I'm going to do is have, because he offered, have Jake Summers read it, especially since he's written a novel. I think he'll have a good lens to sort of look at it from. So have like maybe a couple like beta readers, uh, and then go from there. Probably have them like read through it, quickly or whatever at whatever pace, and then from there try and shop it out to then go the route of like trying to shop it out to literary agents, and then go from there. Like apparently, my best bet might be some of these smaller sort of like noir publishers. Um, I'll butcher the pronunciation of these two publications, so I won't say the names. But there's two I've actually like just with Claude kind of gone back and forth, and it's like there's these two noir publications that would probably be your best bet for this particular novel. Yeah.
That's
I want to
exciting.
go the traditional publisher route because I think it would just give me like a ton of credibility and stuff that I think is worth doing. Like for that first book, because if you can build that credibility right off the bat, and who knows, maybe get in with these like the publishers and so that it's more something when you're ready to release your second book, it's like, yeah, what's up, Mike? What are you working on? What do you have there? That would be ideal, right? So yeah, that's my route. And then if the traditional route didn't work out because there just wasn't enough interest or whatever, then I'd probably go the self publishing route.
If you do self-publishing, do you just do it on Amazon, or do you like print books and sell them, or how does that work?
I think it's both, right? And you would you'd want it to be available to both different types of readers, right? Because like let's be honest, not everybody has a Kindle. I myself only got a Kindle like within the last 6 months or something like that, maybe even less. Now that I have one, it's actually incredible. I think it's one of the best ways to consume books, especially when you're traveling. Because I've done the opposite too, where you're carrying around a bunch of books on you, and it's like, man, that is it takes up space. So there, one of my first times traveling to Colombia, I had like 6 or 7 books on me, man.
Damn.
Yeah, and I think I read like one of them. So can't continue doing that. But yeah, so you'd want to also have like physical copies that you can mail out to people as well as just the Kindle. So yeah,
Maybe even like mailing it out to like people with big audiences potentially that are into novels. Like that could be something. Maybe I don't know.
yeah, yeah. Anything like anything like that. And that's the kind of stuff that I'll be looking into more and more, right? Because you can tap into. I'd almost call it something closer to like kind of like almost influencer marketing, right? Like if you knew there was like say some guy on YouTube or something, right, who consumes or reads your type of novel, they they read about that genre, and then they do like book reviews on YouTube. Because I've also more recently realized there's a lot of people on YouTube who do like kind of like book reviews, or kind of like these are my top 10 recommendations for books you should read. These 10 books will get you obsessed with reading, stuff like that. I didn't really even know that channels like that existed until more recently. So let's say that you found one like that, and you're in the genre of like crime thriller or something, right? And you've written a crime thriller book, and you went to some guy where he reviews crime thrillers on YouTube, but he's got 100,000 subscribers. Sure, like that would be an amazing an amazing thing to do, because that something like that could be one of the best forms of marketing. If he ends up liking it and he says good things about it, how many of the people are following him for a reason, right? So something like that could really increase book sales, you know.
Yeah, or like a podcast or something like that, hitting up people that have podcasts that are interested in novels or books or whatever. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's probably a bunch of different ways to do it, and you're also your own audience. What's interesting too is like you could potentially spin up a YouTube page, and the shorts you don't necessarily need subscribers, and if it's a good short, like you can get over 1,000 like views with 0 subs, and it's like pretty low effort, right? Like you could just do some readings of your book and talk about it.
Something that like crossed my mind earlier, like you were mentioning that our videos have passively just gotten like 28,000 views just
Yeah,
from the shorts. And like, let's, I mean, 28,000 views, that's not like it's not like life changing. I'll put out it's, but it also, I should say, it's something, right?
yeah,
But on,
sure.
on LinkedIn, right, like I can put out a single post that get like a text only post that gets 28,000 views. Not everyone, right?
Mhm.
Like majority will just get like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 impressions, that kind of thing, right? Like a decent post might get that, right? But we're talking about something that's very passive. We just show up every week and we've been doing this. And like, how many subscribers do you have on your YouTube channel?
I
Like
only have 12. That's it on that.
12.
There, it's not even like literally. This is the only thing that's going there is this stuff. So
And
it's
that's what I
like,
mean. Like
yeah,
I have 23,000 followers on LinkedIn, right? So,
yeah,
so we're talking about a guy who has 23,000 getting like, maybe on average, like 2 to 4,000. And then you got like outliers that do 20,000 impressions, 30,000 impressions. And then you got your like rare ones. Like this happens like once a year. You get something that goes ballistic and gets like 150,000, 200,000 impressions or something like that,
yeah.
right? So, and you've got 12 subscribers on YouTube. So if it's like, I probably would, because another thing too is it's video. So even if you are getting like less views, like let's say you're getting 1,000 impressions on a short or something like that, it's video, so it's more immersive and it builds like more trust because there's an actual person on the screen talking to you, a real human, and it builds more trust. It builds more rapport. So I probably would fire up a YouTube page. I really should already have it linked and all that, but I'd fire it up, and then I think that I'd probably talk to a guy like you. I'd probably talk to you, and I'd be like, "Hey, can we do some? Can we do some of these lives around my book, right? Where you ask me questions specifically about like certain parts of the book, and like, or maybe you also ask me like, how was all this like inspired? Like, I know you've been to Medellin, like you ask me questions like that, and I
Yeah,
go in
for
and I
sure.
tell you my answer, and that I think that something like that would probably be a great way to market it too. Because then, shit, you take the shorts from something like that are already going out to YouTube, cross promote them to like to Instagram, to LinkedIn, to Twitter, to Threads, just every single day, just distribute, distribute, distribute. I mean, God, even if you just didn't absolutely hit it out of the park on your first book, if you just like kind of religiously, you got to mix it up though, because you can't just do the same you can't do the same thing every day. But if one is like personal story about when I was in Medellin, and the next one's about how cartel bosses speak in coded language and the research that went into that, like you gotta vary the topic a little bit, but it can work. And then also throw in some regular ghostwriting content.
The cool thing is like you're actually there too. So like I don't know, like you hanging out at the restaurants, eating at these restaurants, and what your inspiration is. Because a lot of people like will talk about these places and never actually probably go there, and you're kind of living in the scene, right? And like yeah, it sounds like a cool thing to document, like a Bolton Bites thing, but more for like your Medellin, like what are you eating down there, and like like where are you hanging out, and like what does a day look like?
Yeah, and that's interesting too because I have a couple chapters in the book. kind of couldn't even avoid it because I do have that sort of food blogger background as well. There's a couple chapters where I think that I'll probably limit it where it's only really one chapter that kind of describes the food in a more like visceral sort of like way um, that goes deeper on the taste of it and stuff like that, and like the ingredients in it. And I think I'll make that the this one scene in chapter 2 where he goes to this Chinese restaurant on top of the hill, and I'll have it like kind of go a little deeper on what the what the wonton soup tasted like or whatever, right? But then from there, I actually noticed that going going in depth um, on like the taste of the food, the description of it was actually something that was more counterproductive later in the book because it starts to feel more like, is this a food blog or something, or am I reading a crime novel? So sprinkling in just a dash of that is cool and kind of like unexpected, but it's not something I want to go all throughout the entire book. And I actually am going to downplay it later on in the book, where there's like other scenes where the tourist and his buddy, who I've called Cooper, who is based off actually a real character, who's an Australian guy, buddy of mine. Um, so Cooper is based off of him. Dale actually on in the live here knows Cooper as well. Uh, but yeah, so instead of it being like this very descriptive description of this dish called bandeja paisa, this Medellin or a Colombian dish, instead it's going to be very just kind of like, oh yeah, it's like rice, arepa, beans, this, chicharron, but it's like no description of like how it tasted or anything like that. Just it's meant to be more just like dry like that, which I've also learned that being more kind of dry and cold and restrained, which actually we do this with social media content too. Like it's like when you create a bullet list, I did this, I did that, I did that. That's just cold and sort of like the process that you went through, and it's just a list of tasks. But that restraint with fiction writing is actually a real strength, because then when you have something actually happen, then it actually pops, So all that restraint that you've built, like, oh, bandeja paisa, this and that, they walked in, he grabbed the cash, whatever. But then when something actually happens, like the scene where somebody actually gets like killed or something, it actually then hits.
Yeah.
Whereas if everything is overly dramatic, then it doesn't work. It's like putting exclamation marks in social media posts. Like if you read my social media posts now, you'll pretty much almost never see me use an exclamation mark.
kind
Um,
of kind of reminds me of music too, where you have like a simple idea, like a simple bass line, and then it's more and more stuff is built on top of it, and it gets more interesting from like the drums or like layering things on top of it. So I totally get what you're saying. And then like
exactly.
when they like pop something in the middle or whatever on a or whatever the chorus, and it pops like extra hard. So I totally get what you're saying.
Exactly. And some of the bands that you're into, because I know what you're into. I know you're into like the Shins. You're probably into like the Rack on Tours and stuff like that too, a little bit.
Yeah,
But you're into kind of like that sort of alt rock, garage rock, kind of underground scene, right?
totally. Yeah. I don't know if you like Explosions in the Sky, but I love those guys. They're only
Oh,
instrumental. They're from Austin, Texas. Look up a song called Your Hand in Mine. They're fucking amazing. Like they're all just instrumental. But like
I'll check them out.
it's good for listening to like when you're writing because it's just no lyrics. So and yeah.
And what some of these bands do well, like you talk about, like say the Shins or like the Rack on Tours. Actually, the Rack on Tours are a really great example. Jack White's band after he did the White Stripes. I'm thinking of this one song that's like find yourself a girl and settle down. Live a simple life in a simple town. Steady as you go, steady as you
Oh yeah, it's
go,
got that
right?
like kind of like
It breaks into that chorus, right?
yeah.
But the verse is just like, the bass line's like, boom, 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 boom. And the guitar is just like, down, 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 down. I think it does like chord hits and stuff like this, kind of almost like Motown style. And then it breaks into the chorus and it's like big, like Nirvana type guitars, right?
Yeah,
So
guy's fucking
that's what I'm
badass.
talking about.
Yeah,
Restraint during the verse. And I guess if you think about it, it's like your average chapter in a fiction book is kind of like the verse where it's like you're purposely like keeping restraint on it. But then once you get like into more like climax type stuff or like plot twists or you know, that kind of thing, or like the climax of the book is like the chorus, right? Where things have actually broken loose now and you're seeing, oh wow, okay, now it's on. Things are escalating, the explosions are happening, the
there's
gunshots, you know.
there's something about dynamics too, or like our brains too. Like they notice patterns, right? And then when the drummer all of a sudden like syncopates a beat, and like you expect it to come in and at one place because your brain locked into it, but they switch it up on you. That's like when like the shit's like. That's why I love musicianship because I feel like it all kind of blends into like writing and like restraint and all these things too.
I love that you just said syncopates as well. Like you clearly understand music, because I mean not everyone even knows what syncopation is, but like yeah, syncopation, like you have something where just yeah the beat hits on the drum hits on a beat that you weren't expecting, and then it's like a fill out of nowhere, and then it's into like the chorus or something, or like a bridge or whatever. And if you think about it, syncopation is kind of like those plot twists within a fiction novel.
Yeah, you're expecting it
Um,
to go one way and it goes another. You're like, oh fuck, I wasn't expecting that.
yeah, something we don't do in social media writing for the most part, unless you're like you'd use it, but we tend to only use it if you're somebody's doing like a product launch or something, or it's kind of like a teaser of what's to come. It's like join me on my next podcast. I'm going live with Jeremy Thone, where we're going to talk about this and also a surprise some like a surprise guest or a surprise topic, that will help you add whatever, um, book more sales calls, whatever it might be. But like, we don't usually leave an open loop open at the end of a social media post unless it's like very specifically like you're purposely leaving that curiosity gap. Most of the time we're closing out the open loops before the post is even done, where what a novel does is it will leave an open loop like that might have happened at the beginning of the book, and it might close it. Some of them are getting closed like in the middle of the book, other ones aren't getting closed until the very end,
Yeah,
right? So
that resolution is interesting, which also goes back to music, like going back to the tonic or the root or whatever. So it's like everything needs to be resolved, and when something's not resolved in our head, I feel like it just becomes irritating until then, or you want to keep on going through it until it is actually like that question's going to be itched, which probably keeps people like
yep.
hooked and like reading through it.
Which is also why most good books and most good movies start with that like in media res thing I was talking about, where
Yeah,
it starts in the middle of the things, in the middle of the action. Like I think a really good example is like the way Goodfellas, the way that movie starts, right, where they're driving, and at first like it just looks like they're driving calmly in this car. They're all pretty deadpan, and you end up realizing they've got somebody in the trunk, right? They got somebody in the trunk who's like, he
yeah,
starts banging and shit. Like turns out they thought they like fully killed the guy. It turns out he's actually still alive. And then it gets to this scene where they've dug a ditch, and then they open the trunk. He's still alive in there, and then it shows like I think Joe Pesci's character. Like he's about to shoot, and he gets off a couple gunshots, and it's like I was knew I wanted to be a gangster, right? And it goes back to like the childhood scene of Henry Hill, and it goes to the song "Rags to Riches." I I know I go from rags to riches. Mafia scenes, yeah, classic.
Yeah, my phone's gonna die. So, are you good for the same time next week?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and we'll have Kelsey, I think, on the next one.
Yeah,
She
and
had a
thanks.
sales call today.
Yeah, thanks,
Awesome,
Devin and Dale, for being on the call, you guys, and have a good weekend, everyone. Peace.
awesome. See you guys.